This week's movements with Grant Nader, Senior Portfolio Manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. Markets locally and abroad were reacting very positively to some U.S. economic data. Could you tell us more?
Yeah, we've actually had a few good data points this week. We saw today the core PCE inflation data, which is a really key measure that the Fed looks at, came in better than expected. And followed up by yesterday, we had slightly better than expected unemployment numbers and upward revised GDP. So we've had a number of data points that have been very supportive for the economic growth and underpin in the US, even at the same time as we saw the Fed talk as hawkish as possible at their recent meeting, along with the ECB. So the market is tending to shrug off the rate hike talk and to take a much more positive outlook on where we could go over the sort of medium term around inflation and rates.
So, Grant, anyone with banking shares are sure to be happy today. Tell us a bit more.
Well, the banks have, not only today, they've actually had a really good month. You know, this is half year end, it's quarter end, and it's month end today. And if we look at the month, the banks really, from what I can tell, came in second only to the retailers. So the whole sort of South African eNCA sector, if you like, caught a strong bid this month and the banks finished up around 13% for the month, retailers up around 16%. And I think there's a general consensus that there's some value that's apparent in the banks despite the gloom and the doom we see in South Africa. And if you're willing to look through the noise and you start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, the banks still offer opportunity, even if we see another hike or two from the Reserve Bank. The banks do seem to have some capacity, I think, to absorb probably another % before the credit loss ratio starts to bite and offset the benefits they get from this further rate hikes. So it's a good space to be, and it's nice to see some green markets for a change.
So, Grant, if we take this whole week, the rand went up, it went down, it went up and it went down, and yet it weakened again today against the greenback. Just take us through this week. What exactly happened that made the rand so volatile?
Actually, the rand has been thrown around by what's happening, I think, more so in China. You know, their GDP, well, they're not GDP, their manufacturing numbers, their stimulus expected hasn't been coming through from China. The growth outlook is a little lower than expected. And so commodities have been under pressure. Now, the rand is quite closely tied to commodities in terms of supporting our terms of trade. And so it's been weakening on the back of that. Then you add the Fed tough talk on rate hikes, driving the dollar, strengthening the dollar and actually weakening the rand. So we've had a lot of volatility around those two data points, I think, in the currency. But you haven't seen that play out in the underlying stocks that are usually a bit more correlated with the rand. And I find that quite encouraging.
So let's have a look at the big winners of the week on the local market.
So without a doubt, the big news on the week was the Naspers process unbundling. Or not the unbundling, but the breaking of that cross-holding structure. Naspers finishing up 11% odd on the week, process up about 5%. And given the size of those stocks in the market, those are very big moves. We had Richemont follow up behind that, and then it was really the retailers and the banks that followed up strongly behind that. Again, we're seeing this consensus around the value being offered in South Africa in the SA Inc. basket of stocks. And you're seeing some of the global industrials like Richemont and Anheuser starting to catch a bit. So we had a very nice strength. Obviously, the biggest laggards over the course of the week was the PGM basket. They've been sold very hard over the course of the month. Finished on the green today. So we're starting to see some buying coming in, some bottom picking perhaps at month end. Even in the general miners that finished down for the month and for the week, for that matter.
Many thanks, Grant, for your time tonight. That was the Senior Portfolio Manager at Benguela Global Fund Managers. Up next.